You know, back in the 4th century BCE, the entire Greek world was basically on a knife's edge, and right at the heart of it all was this epic showdown. But it wasn't a clash of armies, not at first. It was a clash of ideas, pitting one of history's greatest speakers against one of its most ambitious kings. This is the story of how words themselves went to war. Just try to imagine being in the Athenian assembly and hearing someone say, that. I mean, this isn't just a political jab, this is pure venom. The orator Demosthenes wasn't just disagreeing with a rival king. He was calling him a plague, a total outsider, basically less than human. So who was this so-called knave? Well, it was none other than Philip II of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great. And the man spouting all that fire, Demosthenes, would use his incredible gift for words to shove Athens into a war that would literally change the course of history. So the big question is, how on earth did it come to this? All right, let's set the scene a little bit. We're in Athens, but this isn't the glorious Athens from its golden age. Not even close. The city is kind of stuck, suffering from this strategic paralysis. Its empire is a shadow of its former self, and now it's facing this brand new rising power up north that it just cannot figure out what to do with. And that power to the north, it was rising, and rising fast. So in 359 BC, Philip takes the throne of Macedonia. Just 2 years later, bam, he snatches the Athenian colony of Amphipolis. Then, by 348, he completely destroys Olynthus, one of Athens' most important allies. They signed this shaky peace deal in 346, but by 341, he's threatening the cities that control Athens' grain supply, their very lifeline. Philip wasn't just knocking on the door anymore, he was kicking it in. So back in Athens, the city was just completely torn in two about how to handle this guy. This split created two totally different paths forward. On one side, you had the diplomat Socrates, who actually saw Philip as a potential unifier for all of Greece. And on the other, you had the firebrand Demosthenes, who saw him as nothing less than a barbaric monster bent on destroying their freedom. Okay, let's unpack that first argument, the one for peace, or, well, at least cooperation. Socrates wasn't naive. He saw Philip's strength, but he had this idea that maybe, just maybe, it could be used for a greater good. Socrates actually wrote this directly to Philip. His logic was pretty straightforward. Hey, let's stop all this endless infighting among the Greeks. Let's get you to lead a united Greek army against the real enemy, the one they'd been fighting for over 100 years, the massive Persian Empire. Look, Socrates' argument was just purely pragmatic. He looked around and saw the Greek city-states were exhausted and weak from constantly fighting each other. And in Philip, he saw a strong, proven leader. So why not harness that strength, unite Greece, and finally go settle the score with Persia? It was a logical, very tempting vision, but it wasn't the one that won the day. No, instead of that pragmatic vision, Athens got captivated by something much darker and way more urgent. It came in the form of a speech, the Third Philippic, delivered by Demosthenes in 341 BCE. This was his last, most desperate gamble to wake Athens up before it was too late. Demosthenes' first move was just brilliant. He completely reframed the entire debate. He stood up and argued that the question wasn't if they should go to war. He claimed that Philip's actions, taking cities, moving troops, undermining their allies, meant the war was already happening, whether Athens wanted to admit it or not. He's saying that waiting around for Philip to send a formal declaration of war is just madness. Philip's whole strategy was to act like he was at peace while he was methodically setting the stage for Athens' total destruction. The war wasn't on the horizon, it was already here. Next, he makes it personal. He turns this thing from a political disagreement into a full-blown existential crisis. This wasn't just a war against another Greek state, he argued. This was a war for the very soul of Greece against a foreign, uncivilized menace. I mean, this language is just brutal, and it was designed to be. He's basically saying, look, when we fought Spartans or Thebans, that was like a family squabble among true Greeks. But this guy, Philip, he's that pestilent knave, an outsider from a land so backwards you couldn't even buy a decent slave there. He was deliberately framing Philip as something less than Greek, a threat to their entire identity. And then, after painting this terrifying picture of the enemy at the gates, he delivers the masterstroke. He turns the blame inward. He argues that Philip isn't strong because his army is so great. Philip is strong because Athens has become weak, lazy, and totally addicted to the empty promises of corrupt politicians. This is just a masterclass in persuasion. He's scolding the Athenians for sure, but he's also giving them this sliver of hope. He's basically saying, the only reason you're losing is because you haven't even bothered to fight yet. If you just wake up, you can still win this. So Demosthenes didn't just give these incredible speeches. He actually proposed a radical change in how Athens did everything. He laid out a very clear choice between the comfortable way things were and the much harder path of resistance. On one hand, you had the status quo. That meant funding social programs, the Rhetoric fund. Demosthenes demanded they divert that money to the military. The status quo meant relying on hired mercenaries. He called for a return to a citizen army. It meant isolation and appeasement versus his plan of building a massive pan-Hellenic alliance to stand up to Philip. He was asking them to trade their comfort for their survival. And the incredible thing is, it actually worked. The Third Philippic lit a fire under Athens. The city finally shook off its apathy and started getting ready for the fight they knew was coming. And Demosthenes, who was once just a speaker, he becomes a diplomat, traveling all over Greece to build his alliance. And he starts racking up these stunning successes. First, Athenian forces help free the island of Euboea from pro-Macedonian rulers. Then, he locks in a crucial alliance with Byzantium to protect their grain supply. He even manages to get funding from the Persian king, Philip's other major enemy. But the crown jewel, his greatest achievement, was convincing Athens' old, bitter rival, Thebes, to join them and form a final united front against the Macedonian invasion. And this is where all those powerful words met the brutal reality of war. At Chaeronea, the Greek alliance came face to face with Philip's professional, battle-hardened army, an army led by the military genius of both Philip and his teenage son Alexander. The result? It was a catastrophe. The Greek forces were utterly crushed, and in a single day, the age of the free, independent Greek city-state was over. So what do we make of Demosthenes' legacy? I mean, he rallied a nation, he built a powerful alliance, and he made a stand for freedom. But he also led his people into a battle they couldn't win, a battle that led to their complete domination. So was he a hero, or was he a fool? History has never really been able to decide. To some people, he's the ultimate visionary patriot, the last great defender of democracy against a tyrant. But to others, he's a reckless agitator, a short-sighted politician whose pride and passion dragged Athens into a pointless and totally predictable disaster. In the end, we're left with this timeless question. When you're faced with a rising power that threatens to completely change your world, is it better to fight for the ideals you believe in, even if it might lead to your own ruin? Or is it smarter to adapt to that new reality, even if it means giving up some of your freedom? The debate between Demosthenes and Socrates didn't end on that battlefield. It's a debate that echoes in every single generation.